Booby traps and danger around every bend. With Nate and his dad, the adventure never ends. From the pyramids to the deepest jungle green, lost cities of gold, sights unseen, dusty tombs and treasures that gleam. They're living the life like an 80s dream alive. Hey now, Nate, let's start the engine, chasing relics, father, son stride. Hey now, Nate, ancient legends, globetrot myths, let's take that ride. Incan temples, desert sands, cryptic clues in foreign lands.
The road that would eventually be known as the King's Highway started as a simple footpath more than 5,000 years ago. By the Iron Age, the King's Highway was a mature, vital trade route. It began in Heliopolis, Egypt, and wound its way east to Isla, modern Aqaba, on the Red Sea, then north through the kingdoms of Edom, Moab, Amman, ending at the ancient city of Rasafa in modern Syria. Countless battles and wars were fought over access to and control of the King's Highway in the millennium leading up to Roman annexation. In the 1st century CE, Emperor Trajan ordered the King's Highway between Isla and Bostra, modern Busra, Syria, rebuilt, modernized, and renamed the Via Nova Traiana. Petra, no longer a capital, but still an important city, benefited greatly from the improvements to the King's Highway. Even centuries later, as trade routes migrated from land to sea and Petra began to fade into memory, the King's Highway continued to be an important pilgrimage route for Christians and later Muslims. On our final day in Jordan, we met up once again with Alex for one last adventure as we made our way from Petra back to Amman before departing for Istanbul. Our route would take us north along Highway 35, which still follows the ancient King's Highway and retains the name as a memorial. Barely a 5-minute ride from the Petra guest house, our first stop was the Crusader fort now known as Qal'at al-Wu'ayra, or simply al-Wu'ayra. The ruins of the fort sit perched atop jagged cliffs carved more or less flat. The only access is via a small footbridge at the southeast corner, complete with a gate carved directly through a large boulder. Built circa 1116 CE by Baldwin I of Jerusalem as an outpost for Crac de Montréal, Montreal Castle, now known as Qal'at al-Shobak, the Franks referred to this small fort as Livo Moisi, Old French for the Valley of Moses. In written records, that vernacular name was later rendered into medieval Latin as Castellum Vallis Moisis. Like many Crusader sites, it carried both a spoken French name and a Latin documentary one. The fort was conquered by Sultan Salah ad-Din in 1188, with Montreal Castle itself falling the following spring. Crac de Montréal became Qal'at al-Shobak and remained an important strategic fortification for hundreds of years, only being finally decommissioned in the late 19th century. Livo Moisi eventually became al-Wu'ayra, the little rugged place. But it's only mentioned in historical documents after the Crusaders departed. It was around 35 years later in Yaqut al-Hamawi's monumental geographical work, Mu'jam al-Budani. By that point, the fort was already deserted and largely forgotten by all but those who lived nearby. Though it should be noted that recent studies by the University of Florence have found that there were periods of non-military habitation, and recycling of the collapsed Crusader masonry, including the growth of a small village at the site, continuing as recently as the late 19th century. Impressive though the site surely is, most of the credit belongs to the Nabateans. When the Franks arrived in the early 12th century, they found that the ridge had already been stepped and flattened by extensive quarrying a millennium earlier. It had also served as a high place and necropolis for the Nabateans. Extant architectural features like carved storerooms, cisterns, and even the monumental gatehouse itself started out as Nabatean tombs and beetles. Ancient water channels were repaired and replastered. New towers were built atop ancient carved processional steps. As one friend put it, the Crusaders built the walls, but the Nabateans provided the floor. The Dana Biosphere Reserve is Jordan's largest nature reserve at 308 square kilometers, 119 square miles. We stopped for just a moment to appreciate the view from the top of the Wadi Dana down to where it joins the Wadi al-Araba just south of the Dead Sea. Khirbat adh-Dharieh is a large multi-period archaeological site showing signs of constant habitation from around 5000 BCE to 1000 CE. Its longevity can be attributed largely to being surrounded by fertile agricultural land and 3 reliable nearby springs, not to mention its strategic position along the King's Highway and other trade routes. The most striking extant feature of the site is a large Nabatean temple complex, built right around the time of the Roman annexation in the early 2nd century. Most likely dedicated to Dushara, its facade is believed to have originally stood 15 meters high. The well-preserved motab in the center of the temple would have been where beetles were placed for ritual and pilgrimage purposes. Directly beneath the motab are 2 cultic or oracular rooms that would have been accessible to the priests. Excavations of these chambers uncovered a collection of beetles as well as incense burners and pottery. We also found that there were intentional holes cut through the floor of the motab into those rooms. They may have been used by priests to stand below and simulate the voice of a god coming from a beetle during a ritual. They also would have allowed the beetles to be safely stored within, when not in use, but still be fed offerings of oil, wine, or blood of sacrificed animals. Our favorite part of the temple had to be the heart-shaped columns at the corners of the motab. I had never noticed anything like this before, but having seen it here, I began to see it in other structures, especially the Great Temple in Petra, as I was editing the footage for the trip. What a fantastic way to manage stress at the corners, while looking gorgeous as an architectural element. The Nabateans didn't invent this, but they sure did it with style. Built circa 1142 CE by Lord Paganus Pencerna, with the financial support of Queen Melisende and King Fulk of Jerusalem, Qal'at Moabit, now known as Qal'at al-Karak, was nearly impregnable at the time of its construction. When Qal'at Moabit fell to a months-long siege by the Muslim army in late 1188, Qal'at Moghayal, not nearly as solid or defensible, soon followed. Under the Ayyubids, Qal'at Moabit became Qal'at al-Karak, and in 1244 underwent the first of the many expansions and improvements it would receive over its life as a military installation. Other major renovations occurred under the Mamluks and the Ottomans before Karak Castle was finally permanently retired from military service in 1917, nearly 800 years after its construction.
Wow, this place is awesome. Yep. So
Like this, they would definitely frown upon it.
yeah.
Good size.
Maybe there's an oubliette under it. Huh?
Yeah.
It would kind of be weird to have an oubliette in your bedroom or your barracks room. Like do the soldiers keep it as a pet? You know, like, you still down there, Billy? You haven't forgotten my name. Not yet.
The tunnels and corridors are impressive and seem almost unending, not surprising for a castle that once held a garrison of 1,400, including 200 cavalry. Though parts of the castle are closed to the public, a large portion can be freely explored. The Iron Age town of Rabbath Moab, known in Hellenistic and Roman times as Areopolis, has been called ar-Rabba, or simply Rabba, since at least 1321 CE. The largest remaining visible structures of Areopolis are a Byzantine church and this partially rebuilt temple originally dedicated to Diocletian and Maximian.
That's true.
The ruins of Areopolis still hold a prominent position in the center of Rabba. Innumerable ruined forts, monasteries, and bridges along the banks and cliffs, as well as mentions in many ancient inscriptions and religious texts, attest to the importance of the Wadi al-Mujib, going back thousands of years. From at least the Iron Age through late antiquity, Wadi al-Mujib was known as the Arnon. It slashes a dramatic wild notch in the earth as it cuts through 5,604 feet, 1,708 meters, of cliffs and gorges to deposit the collected flow of 7 tributaries into the Dead Sea. Today, Wadi al-Mujib is home to the Mujib Biosphere Reserve, a popular tourist destination hosting hundreds of species of plants and animals, as well as exciting hiking trails both in and out of the water. About a mile north of the walled ruins of al-Rasas, ancient Castron Mafah, is a curious relic, unique throughout Jordan and perhaps the entire Middle East for its exceptionally well-preserved state. Rising to nearly 50 feet above the surrounding steppe and looking all the more precarious owing to its small footprint, a 6th century Byzantine Stylite Tower stands resolute against the march of time. Intended for occupancy by only one person at a time, the tower had no interior other than a small room at the very top. Those who chose this form of ascetic life stayed, often for years, atop their tower or column, seeking physical separation from the material world so they could focus on the spiritual. Most ancient Stylite towers and columns exist now only as scattered remnants and stories. The tower at al-Rasas is truly special. We got into our hotel in Amman fairly late that night, and had to be up painfully early the next morning to catch our flight. Alex, ever the steadfast guardian, got home later and got up earlier in order to get us to the airport on time. But it all worked out just fine. We said our goodbyes and promised to stay in touch, and we were off again, this time to Istanbul. Upon arriving in Turkey, we connected with the shuttle to our hotel and got on the road. But as we drove the 45 minutes or so into Istanbul, looking out the window, cruising down the highway, all I could think was, this looks just like home. If I didn't know, for certain, that we were on the very southeastern edge of Europe, driving from the shore of the Black Sea down to our hotel a few blocks from where the Bosphorus meets the Sea of Marmara, I would just think we were somewhere in the Texas Hill Country. As we got closer to the city, of course, the illusion of being anywhere but where we were had disappeared. With a population of nearly 16 million, Istanbul is both the most populated city in Europe and 8th most populated city in Asia. Though, since the city straddles Europe and Asia, it feels a bit like cheating to count the whole population toward both sides. Point being, it's huge. Though it didn't feel huge. As we drove through its streets and along the seashore, past modern skyscrapers next to Roman walls, it somehow managed to feel intimate. Like there were 16 million small stories going on all around, but you could take the time to listen to each one. Istanbul is one of those places where the name itself comes from a long and mostly half-hearted fight between official records and what's commonly spoken. The first known name of the city, dating to the mid-7th century BCE, was Vizadion, or Byzantium. Between 324 and 330 CE, Emperor Constantine oversaw a large expansion of Byzantium, officially moving the capital of the Roman Empire there on 11 May 330, at which time the city was officially renamed Nova Roma, or New Rome. But Byzantium had been a Greek city for nearly 1,000 years at that point. The people had already started calling the expanded city the city of Constantine, Constantinopolis, or Constantinople. Even when new laws used the official name, they often phrased it as New Rome, which is Constantinople. Within 40 or 50 years, Constantinople had won, and Nova Roma quietly disappeared, even from official usage. Though by then the shorthand on the street usually just called it Ipolis, Greek for the city, since there were no other large cities in the region. Over the next 2 centuries, after the split of Rome into the Eastern and Western empires, and especially after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, the use of Latin steadily declined, even in official records, in what we now refer to as the Byzantine Empire, though they never called themselves that. Finally, in the early 7th century, Greek was made the official language of the empire. Now, you'd be forgiven for assuming the Ottomans chose the name Istanbul after they conquered the Romans in 1453, but that name was already in spoken use by the 10th century. Now, I haven't found anyone who can say with 100% certainty that they know where the name Istanbul came from, but the most likely answer I've found goes back to how the people on the street just referred to it as the city for hundreds of years. Where are you going? Eastern Poland, to the city. A non-Greek speaker might hear Eastern Poland and assumes the name of the place. Over time, it fossilizes into Turkish as Istanbul, and serves as the informal name of Constantinople, which was itself never officially renamed from Nova Roma in the first place. And again, the informal name grew, in usage, over time, culminating in Istanbul being enshrined as the official name of the city in 1930, the first official name change recorded in 1,600 years. I don't know why, but I find that beautiful mess delightful. Regardless of your religious affiliation or lack thereof, the first sight of the Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque will cause the rest of the world to just go silent. Being in its presence demands acknowledgement of all it has witnessed and all it represents. The current structure, minus minarets, was completed in 537 CE. Its original name was Naustis Hagias tou Theosophias, Greek for Temple of the Holy Wisdom of God. It was the largest, fully enclosed building on Earth in terms of interior volume until the completion of St. Peter's Basilica in 1626. It represents the last moment when the ancient world solved interior infinity, and then we forgot how and why for over 1,000 years. The Column of Constantine was dedicated 11 May 330 to commemorate the city being proclaimed the new capital of the Roman Empire. It originally had a statue of the emperor on top, which was blown off in a storm in 1106. The current masonry base was added in 1779, but the original base is still there, about 8 feet below current ground level. The Grand Bazaar of Istanbul is one of the largest and oldest covered markets in the world. Construction started in 1455, shortly after the Ottoman conquest, and the shops have been in constant operation since 1456. That's over 570 years. Today, the Grand Bazaar consists of over 4,000 shops across 61 covered streets and attracts as many as 400,000 visitors per day. Per day. It was fascinating to walk along, seeing the seamless mixture of the very old and the very new. There was a dreamlike quality to it, accentuated here by the editing tricks I had to use to try to remove the horrible flicker caused by my shooting in NTSC mode under 50 Hz, aka PAL, lighting. Peeking in on the bare walls of the occasional shop space being prepared for a new tenant, we were struck by the familiar sight of Roman-style brickwork peeking back at us through the cracks and gaps and centuries of plaster. It's honestly worth a visit to Istanbul just to visit the Grand Bazaar. Early the next morning, as we waited for our airport shuttle, exhausted and satisfied, we got one last quiet, private moment with the Hagia Sophia. The stories those walls could tell. When we got off the last plane in San Antonio, we were both quietly happy that the adventure was over. For like a week at most.
Okay, we are in Terminal B.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, I made sure to sound 10.
Then the memories began to fade of days we missed our family, or woke up so sore we could barely move, or times we argued over nothing as people do when they spend 2 straight weeks together, or the moments we were filled with anxiety over nothing in particular. And as those memories faded, and we began the process of reliving the experience in order to tell people about it and to put together this record, our desire to return grew and grew. We need to spend more time at so many places. We missed so many details and nearby sites that we learned about later. We longed to go back to this restaurant or that. So many large and small reasons, so much joy shared between Nate and his dad. I have no doubt that we will go back, but at the risk of being cliche, that's another story of another adventure.
Yes, you do.
Thanks for sharing this one with us.
Hello, darling.
Hey, Pepe.
How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Alright, I'm gonna get the shot, but don't look at me weird. Oh, hi. Oh, yeah, I got the shot all right, just for a second. Got it. I'm good. Good, definitely good. All good. Nope, but I did drop a flashlight. Yes.
Yes. This is the one where they filmed that terrible TV show. Now you go inside and you see if the jinn choose you.
Okay.
How interesting. They used a completely different tomb for the interior of this tomb. They wanted that skull-looking facade, but the inside was all shafts, and they were pretty deep and open, and then the kid fell into one, like right here. That's awesome. Okay. We've seen a lot of weird cases of tombs with fairly difficult access points being used as stables by the Bedouins for, all the horses and camels and donkeys that they use to truck people in and out.
This one is like especially odd.
This one is especially odd. I mean, I don't know if you can really tell how steep it is. You'll be able to tell how steep it is when Nate comes down out of there. Come on down out of there.
Are you sure you don't want to show them?
No, they don't need to see the pile of hay and shit to know what hay and shit looks like.
Fair enough. Yeah, they got it.
How in the hell do you get a donkey or a camel or a horse? It had to be a donkey.
Had to be.
Had to be donkey. Donkey's the only one that could even possibly get up there. But how the
And why?
right? There's plenty of others. I mean, like,
Like, literally.
for instance. Unless the cool kids already had this one. Oh wow, that crack across the face is cool. That natural crack that continues on right here. Anyway, that's it for now. Hell of a view. hell of a vision. And there's Kasr al Bint.